What's up everyone? New Odette's video. Today we're focusing on her constellations, how strong they are and how much they increase your team's DPS. I stream on Kick every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. If you find this video useful, please consider to subscribe to my channel. Let's get straight to it. We'll be using the same reference team from the previous video. Zandrone, Yaimiko C1, TTC6 and Odette's Z0 for now. And in case you are wondering, yes, almost every constellation is worth a lot more than pulling for her 5-star signature weapon. As you saw in the last video, her weapon barely changes the team's overall DPS. So let's begin. Our baseline is 100%. What does Constellation 1 do? Whenever Odette triggers the extra hit from her elemental skill, it now deals an additional cryo hit. And if a stellar effect is active, the extra hit also becomes a stellar damage. To keep it simple, in this example team, you basically get one extra stellar conduct hit. That's it. But there's more. Odette also gains 2 extra stacks from her passive talent. You know, the one that normally goes up to 4 stacks, with each stack granting 15% stellar damage bonus. Well, now it goes up to 6. That means more DPS for both Odette and the rest of the team. Just as a reminder of how this passive works, while the stacks belong to Odette, once she leaves the field, she quickly transfers them to the rest of the team instead of keeping them herself, increasing everyone else's stellar damage bonus rather than her own. So those 2 extra stacks translate into more damage for everyone. With Constellation 1, the team's DPS increases to 109.9% compared to Constellation 0. And let me point something out. Remember how small the difference was between her best weapons? The Constellation 1 alone increases your team DPS by over 10%. You know what that means, right? I'm testing you. Obviously, Constellation 1 is far better than pulling for her 5-star weapon. Keep that in mind because we're getting started. Moving on, Constellation 2. This constellation once again revolves around those passive talent stacks. Since we now have up to 6 stacks, every stack now also grants 7% attack to the character holding it. So under optimal conditions, every team member gains up to 42% attack. Odette's benefits as well, although slightly less due to how her passive works. Pretty straightforward. On top of that, whenever Odette enters a stellar state, nearby enemies have their resistance reduced depending on the active stellar reaction. If it's a stellar conduct, enemies lose 20% cryo and electro resistance. If it's stellar swirl, they lose 20% cryo and anemo resistance. Basically a permanent 20% resistance shred for every relevant element. This constellation is a huge deal. Team-wide attack plus universal resistance shred for the elements involved. Your team's DPS jumps all the way to 143.7% of Constellation 0. Guys, Constellation 2 is incredibly strong. Seriously, boosting the current best team's DPS by over 43%. Now for Constellation 3. It simply adds 3 levels of her elemental skill. As expected, it's nothing too crazy. It's only increasing her main source of personal damage. But remember, Odette herself isn't the primary source of your team's damage. The team DPS rises to 147.5%. Not so much to say here, so let's move on. Constellation 4 makes the stellar damage bonus from Odette's elemental burst affect the rest of the team as well, although only at half effectiveness. So if Odette receives 52% stellar damage bonus from her burst, the rest of the team receive 26%. But that's not all. Whenever anyone on the team deals stellar damage, Odette perform a coordinated cryo attack, which can also become stellar if you are playing that version of the team. I mean, stellar conduct or stellar swirl. This coordinated attack can trigger once every 3.5 seconds, meaning you will usually get up to 6 activations per rotation. That pushes the team DPS to 161.7% of Constellation 0. This is another one of those rare cases where the character's Constellation 4 is actually a very meaningful upgrade. It's pretty solid DPS increase. Constellation 5 gives 3 additional levels to her elemental burst. Honestly, it's kind of underwhelming. The only reason it's somewhat useful is because the previous Constellation. More elemental burst levels mean a larger stellar damage bonus for both Odette and, thanks to the Constellation 4, the rest of the team as well. Still, that's about it. Team DPS reaches to 164.1%. Meh. Finally, Constellation 6. First of all, Odette no longer loses the passive talent stacks that grant stellar damage bonus. She keeps all of her stacks while the rest of the team continues receiving theirs as usual. So Odette's own personal DPS goes up. But that's only the beginning. Any character with these stacks, which is basically everyone for almost the entire rotation, now have a 25% elevation on stellar damage. Remember, elevation is a separate damage multiplier, making it extremely powerful buff. The whole team gains 25%, while Odette receives an extra 20% on top of that, for a total of 45% elevation on her. That extra 20% for Odette isn't the main attraction. The real game changer is the 25% elevation for the entire team. Because of that, your team's DPS skyrockets to 210.5% of the Constellation 0 baseline. By my standards, we are well beyond 330k teams DPS at this point. No other Constellation 6 I've tested has reached numbers anywhere near this. Odette is absolutely insane. So Constellation 6 is clearly her strongest constellation, increasing the team's DPS by 46.4%. Constellation 2 comes in second with a massive 33.8% increase. Constellation 4 is also much better than people might expect, adding another 14.2%, and Constellation 1 is nearly a 10% increase by itself. Constellation 3 and Constellation 5 are really the only constellations where you could reasonably consider pulling for her 5-star weapon instead. So if you have Z0, go for Constellation 1. If you have enough Primogems to invest, go for Constellation 2. If you are deciding between Constellation 3 and her signature weapon, honestly, it's up to you. The difference is pretty small. If you're using a standard 5-star weapon, Constellation 3 might actually be the better upgrade. Beyond that, you're entering whale territory. At that point, I think the bigger question won't be whether to get Odette's weapon or another constellation. It will be whether you should invest in one of another character's constellation instead. I'll keep an eye on those questions since they will probably deserve a separate video. That's all for today, everyone. I'll keep covering Genshin leaks, and I'll also be going back to few topics I should have covered weeks ago. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.